Well, there seems to be so many videos out there about Gamaliel the Elder on YouTube related to Sha'ul Antoecie and his alleged relationship as a student of his, which either explores it or refutes it. But there are very few entries that actually discuss Gamaliel I himself. Most of what is available out there is almost exclusively through the lens of Christianity. Christianity embraces him as a defender of the early church against persecution, despite there being no existence of Christians or the church at that time. It is very important to mention this because if we use Christian context in word choice, we give rise to an ongoing misconception that it was an entity far before its time. The sad reality is that this is a sage that was hijacked by the church. Some say he was a secret member of the Netzarim sect, along with Rav Shimon ben Gurion, that is Nicodemus, but the reality is we can only speculate, as his famous speech in Acts 5 is merely one of sober caution more than anything else. After all, the Jews had a problem of an occupying Roman nation, and the last thing they should see is Jews persecuting other Jews. Let's tend to the Roman problem first and sort out our differences later. Welcome to another episode of Insight into the Jewish Sages. Rabban Gamaliel Hazaken, or Rabban Gamaliel I, was a leading authority in the Sanhedrin in the early 1st century. He was the son of Shimon ben Hillel, the grandson of the great Jewish teacher Hillel the Elder, according to Tractate Shabbat 15a5. It is important to state who exactly I'm talking about here, as it can be a bit confusing. The great Hillel was preceded by his son Rabban Shimon, who was then preceded by Rabban Gamaliel the Elder, and then his son Rabban Shimon Gamaliel, or Ben Gamaliel, who was one of the 10 Jewish martyrs. Together, all 4 princes, or Nisim, spanned approximately 100 years. So we are talking about the second last individual in this video, and while I'm here, the word Rabban means our master. Now, it is very crucial to understand that, understandably, any sage that features in a non-negative light in the Netzarim Ketuvim, otherwise known as the so-called New Testament, is either minimalized, sidestepped, or denigrated in rabbinic literature. We also see this with Rav Shimon ben Gurion, otherwise known as Nicodemus, who was a follower of Rebbe Yeshua in secret. We must also bear in mind that rabbinic literature always contrasts the school of Hillel the Elder to that of Shammai, and only presents the collective opinions of each of these opposing schools of thought without always mentioning the individual nuances and opinions of the rabbis within them. Some of these texts do not necessarily portray Gamaliel as being that knowledgeable of the Jewish scriptures, nor do they portray him as a teacher. For this reason, Gamaliel is not listed as part of the chain of individuals who perpetuated the Mishnaic tradition. Instead, the chain is listed as passing directly from Hillel to Yochanan ben Zakkai. Could this be because of his brief defense of persecuting the early Netzarim and Shaul's claim as being a student of his? I'll leave that for you to decide. Nevertheless, the Mishnah mentions Gamaliel's authorship of a few laws about community welfare and conjugal rights. He argued that the Torah should protect women during divorce, and that for the purposes of remarriage, a single witness was sufficient evidence for the death of a husband. Various pieces of classical rabbinic literature additionally mention that Gamaliel sent out 3 letters designated as notifications of new halakhic rulings, which portray Gamaliel as the head of the Jewish body for religious law. So the claim that he wasn't all that familiar with the Jewish scriptures just doesn't hold water. Since the Hillel school of thought is presented collectively, there are very few other teachings which are clearly identifiable as Gamaliel's. There is only one fascinating cryptic dictum comparing his students to classes of fish, where it says, "A richly impure fish is like one who has memorized everything by study, but has no understanding, and is the son of poor parents. And a ritually pure fish is one who has learnt and understood everything, and is the son of rich parents. A fish from the Jordan River is one who has learnt everything but doesn't know how to respond. And the fish from the Mediterranean Sea is like one who has learnt everything and knows how to respond." By dressing up his teaching in simple allegory or parable, it enables it to be understood by a different part of the brain. A childlike aspect grasps the concept and it feeds it to the adult mind. Gamaliel established a number of lenient ordinances and took a broad-minded, compassionate attitude towards its observance. Much like his famous grandfather Hillel, the elder, Gamaliel ruled that the Sabbath laws should be taught to converts realistically rather than rigorously. He also taught Jews to show kindness to Gentiles wherever possible. Gamaliel's authority on questions of religious law is suggested by two Mishnaic anecdotes in which the king and queen ask for advice about rituals. The identity of the king and queen in question is not given, but is generally thought to either be Herod Agrippa and his wife Cyprus, the Nabatean, or Herod Agrippa II and his sister Bernice. Even though few of his actual teachings have been preserved, Gamaliel I held a reputation as one of the greatest teachers in the annals of Judaism. Of his teaching, only one saying is preserved in the Talmud. It enjoins duties of study and scrupulous observance of religious ordinances. Gamaliel's renown is summed up in these words. In Mishnah Sotah 9 it reads, "When Rabban Gamaliel the elder died, regard for the Torah ceased, and purity and piety also died." Even though he was considered lenient, his teaching by today's standards is sadly looked upon by many as extreme. Dear viewer, whoever you are getting your learning from, be sure it's through rabbis that teach the fear of heaven, reward and punishment, Musar, which is character development, and have a heavy emphasis on the Jewish sages. If they don't do this last point, they are ignoring the wisdom gleaned by previous generations of Tzaddikim. Rather than enabling you to stand on the shoulders of giants, you'll be forced to crawl in the dark and reinvent the wheel, so to speak, and end up interpreting things for yourself with your own limited understanding, which is spiritual suicide. But before I go, those of you who may be disappointed that I didn't get into Acts 5, please bear in mind that I'm not really interested in legitimizing Gamaliel's supposed defense and association with the Netzarim, and this shouldn't be your emphasis when studying him either, because we are not following this stuff like it's a sporting competition, as if the goal is that the Netzarim are going to win a grand final by opportunism in trying to find points of legitimacy to validate us as part of the Commonwealth of Israel. We should solely care about his Torah observance, teaching and piety, period. Why? Because this is what Mashiach would be concerned about beyond anything else. Thanks for watching, and bye for now. If you like the content of this channel, get a hold of this book. It is literally jam-packed with information you will not find in most Torah publications. Its pages include topics like the fable of the money-hungry Jew, the lie that propelled the Holocaust, the real root of anti-Semitism, rightly dividing Mashiach, which contains startling truths about the Messiah you will not read anywhere else, Judaism in the New Testament, updated information about the creation of the Golem and the false Messiah, the commandment to wage war, the truth about the Shield of David, a compendium of all the false teachings in the Messianic movement to help you navigate what is truth, biblical capital punishment, and why you should be frightened of sinning, the significance of the land of Israel, the obligations of the student, the eye in the triangle, sanctified sex, how to think like a Jew, and much, much more. There is also an updated chapter 1, and along with all the other chapters, has hundreds of footnotes and references. This is a book that took 10 years to research and compile, and will be a welcome addition to the library of any discerning student of Torah and Mashiach. Get it today on Amazon and other online bookstores. Bye for now.